It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and Odo has been called to Plain Simple Garak's shop. It's not a crime in progress, as he assumes, but rather an attempt to hook Odo up with the owner of a new restaurant on the promenade. Plain Simple Garak must be adding Cupid to his skills, along with Tailor, Gardener and Spy. The attempt fails, despite her making her interest very clear, but then maybe it's because Odo isn't feeling particularly well, what with him having a funny turn shortly after she's departed and falling over. To the infirmary we go, where Odo is being a bad patient. Bashir can tell there's something off Odo's goop being in an unusual state of flux, but he doesn't have an answer for why. What he does know is that moving seems to make things worse, so Odo's going to be staying for a while. Speaking of unwanted news, Gowron, bug-eyed boss of the Klingons, has sent out a message saying they have a claim to an area of space. A slight problem, it's a Federation area, and one the Klingons agreed wasn't theirs a good century back. Sisko suspects a desire to antagonize us, Starfleet being on Gowron's shit list after the unpleasantness here earlier in the season, but there's nothing we can do, so bugger it. Conversation instead turns to Odo and their concern for him. Worf thinks he'd want to be left alone, and Sisko concurs, so he tells everybody to give him space. Kira's never really been one for taking orders, though, so she drops by with a daily security report, so he has something to read. Whilst a considerate choice, it was also the wrong one. He sees something he doesn't like and decides to get personally involved. Trying to stop a suspect is significantly more difficult when he can't hold his shape, though, and his engoopification results in a return to the infirmary. This time his bed is also a bowl, just in case. It's a wise precaution, as things have deteriorated significantly, and despite contacting Dr. Mora, who studied him on Bajor, Bashir's shit out of ideas. There's really only one viable option, thinks Odo, and that's to go visit the Founders themselves. Sisko's plan is to take the Defiant into the Gamma Quadrant, but rather than pootle about in sneaky bastard mode, announce our presence and the reason for being there. Hopefully they won't just kaboom us if we're carrying a god, even if he is also a heretic. Kira wants to come too, but Sisko declines for reasons of needing somebody in charge here, and her also being up the duff. Rather curiously, Plain Simple Garak wants to tag along too. The reason he gives is wanting to see if any of the Cardigan ships that got kaboomed around the Founder homeworld had survivors. Sisko doesn't seem particularly convinced, but thinks Plain Simple Garak might be the best person to keep Odo occupied during the journey. He won't want the mealy-mouthed sympathy anybody else can give him, but he loves a good convoluted mystery, and Plain Simple Garak is an expert in disseminating bullshit. With the understanding that will be Plain Simple Garak's primary purpose, we allow him to join. It's a well-judged choice. Plain Simple Garak's tales about his time as a gardener at the Cardigan Embassy on the Romulan homeworld are enough to keep Odo distracted with trying to figure out just how many assassinations he was involved in. It's not long until our messages have caught somebody's attention, and it would appear they're very, very interested. A quick call tells us they'd like to discuss the matter in person, something Sisko agrees to. We weren't expecting them to teleport onto the bridge, and O'Brien is on the receiving end of a handsy Jem'Hadar when everybody grabs weapons, but Odetta stepping in to stop all this unseemly violence sorts things out. She wants to take Odo back to the rest of his people, and she makes it clear the rest of us aren't invited. Sisko politely tells her to eat shit, and seeing that we're at an impasse, she agrees to escort everybody to her new homeworld on the condition that we aren't able to track the course. A gizmo on the computer makes sure we can't log anything, and the big screen TV goes off too, so that we, I don't know, can't count the number of stars we pass or some shit. With that all taken care of, she'd like to visit our patient. Plain Simple Garak wants to make a good first impression when he meets a Founder. That's going to be tough when a group of his lads turn their former homeworld into a molten marble, but if anybody can charm them, it's him. Odetta pops in and, seeing Odo's condition, briefly links with him. The exchange leaves him better able to hold his form, though Bashir notes he's still not entirely fixed. The how will have to wait, as Odetta wants some privacy, and after Odo agrees, everybody else buggers off. It's a meeting she finds regrettable. Not the surroundings or the company, though she'd likely rather change those too. What she means is him not coming home without prompting, as when Odo airs his suspicions, she admits his current condition is something the Founders did to him. He's the first of their kind to harm another, she says, and must be judged by the Great Link. I'd suggest that's a point of contention when the other lad attacked first, and when kabooming the Defiant would have also murderized Odo, but let's ignore those for now. As far as Odetta's concerned, not letting the solids die was his fault, an argument that essentially amounts to, look what you made me do. Still, she says they're willing to give him a fair shake. The Link will examine his thoughts in detail to understand his motives and, after reaching consensus, pass judgment. On the plus side, that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion, as they struggle to even agree on forcing him to come home. The alternative is carking it if he refuses, as only the Link can cure him permanently, a fact that suggests they're not so open to debate after all, but Odo doesn't have much of a choice, and agrees. Odetta leaves and in goes Bashir, leaving plain simple Garak to ask about Cardigan survivors of the task force that tried to do a genocide on Odetta. It goes about as well as you'd expect, which is to say that she confirms not only are they all corpses, but so is he and his entire species as a result of their attack. It just hasn't happened yet. To the matter of Odo again, and we're trying to figure out a way of tracking him once he's down on the Founder's new homeworld. Or not, as Odo himself tells them to stop, him seeing this as the right thing to do, regardless of how committed to fairness his people truly are. That doesn't mean we're going to leave him to their tender ministrations, though, which is why, when we arrive at the Founder's replacement homeworld, Sisko insists that he and Bashir come too, despite a warning that the process may take days. We teleport down to a small rock in the middle of a sea of Founders, and ignoring questions like how this planet would have a breathable atmosphere or where Sisko and Bashir intend to take a shit, Odo and Odetta enter the Link. While we wait, there's a little activity back up on the Defiant. A security alert has been triggered, and it was caused by plain simple Garak crawling through Jeffrey's tubes. He's trying to get the weapons online and argues with Worf that eliminating the Founder threat is something worth dying for, clearly having taken umbrage at Odetta's promise to do a genocide. Worf's disinclined to let him get the job done and wins the ensuing wrestle. Back down on planet Goop, something is happening. The something is Odo being spat out onto the small island, and it would appear he has his knackers out. A curious thing, considering he can choose what he's wearing, except no he can't, not anymore. Odetta appears and tells us that he's been judged, the penalty for his crime being that he's now a solid, specifically a human. She sends him away with us, and we all teleport back aboard the Defiant. Checks from Bashir confirm Odo is indeed now one of us, save for his face. That, says Odo, was left the way it is, as a constant reminder of what he used to be. Back on DS9, Odo is having a fitting. In all fairness to plain simple Garak, he really is an excellent tailor. The suit Odo's wearing looks exactly like the one he used to mimic. He'll be plain simple Garak's last customer for a while though, Sisko having decreed that he'll spend the next 6 months in one of Odo's cells, what with the whole trying to start a war thing and all. Odo might not be there to watch him quite as much as normal either, as his new human biology means he needs to eat, and that also means he no longer has an excuse to not visit the restaurant owner from the start of the episode. Perhaps other appetites might make themselves known as well. He's experiencing something else new when Sisko finds him later, a headache. Being part of the Great Link put quite a lot of jumbled data in his head that he's struggling to sort, and possibly because that head now has a human brain in it. It's not helped by Gowron popping up on a screen again, a follow-up message to the threats at the start of the episode. He's decided the Klingons intend to take back the area of space he was bitching about earlier, and the ships he sent will kaboom their way through anything from Starfleet that doesn't get out of their way. That's doubly curious to Odo, as he thinks one of those jumbled memories is an image of Gowron, something he believes the other Founders were specifically trying to hide from him, as they're the faces of Founder infiltrators. Sisko looks on as maybe Gowron, maybe not, starts talking about war, so we'll leave him to worry about how we're getting out of this one, until the next adventure. And there it is. Odo now officially joins the newly christened Deep Space Nine Exile Support Group, something he'd been half in for a while due to rejecting them himself, and a topic we touched on in the last video. Speaking of which, yes, a number of you pointed out in the comments of that last video how I'd forgotten Worf was in the same boat. You're absolutely correct and should give yourself some points, though I'd argue it's not entirely my fault that Worf was unmemorable. Anywho, Odo has been forcefully ejected from the Founder Club and turned into one of us silly humans, and that should probably make us have another delve into our semi-regular series of What is Odo? We already know that whatever a changeling chooses to become is what will be registered by a scanner. Calling it mimicry is perhaps the easiest nomenclature, but that vastly understates what's actually happening. When Odo forms a rock, Odo is a rock. And we know he can hold that shape for around 16 hours before he needs to regenerate, but what exactly is he regenerating at that point? Rocks, after all, do not tend to use a lot of energy. The reason I mention all of this is because it raises questions about the method by which the Founders lock his form into that of a human. There are two possible explanations that I can see. First, they fundamentally changed him on a molecular level, and he is now entirely human. That is unlikely for reasons that will become apparent in the next season, as well as the fact that this would basically mean changelings can also perform the job of a replicator. A being that can convert matter and energy at will probably doesn't have much to worry about, besides other entities who can do the same. As I said, possible, but unlikely. Second, Odo is still made of goop, but they permanently removed his ability to transform away from it. That brings a whole raft of additional questions, though, such as the one I raised about regeneration. If forms can be locked permanently, as suggested here, then are those regeneration cycles restoring the ability to transform, rather than the ability to hold a shape, as we'd previously been told? And how does that relate to the gizmo we saw Plain Simple Garak use previously that locked Odo into humanoid form and nearly killed him as a result? Are we saying that if Odo had been mimicking a full human biology when it started up, he'd have been perfectly fine? And if the second option is true, should another random event in the future restore Odo's ability to transform in, let's say about 12 episodes, what happens to the cells of his body that aren't connected anymore? Do the turds that he's laid in the meantime turn into little Odos? Questions and questions and questions, the answers to which we shall never receive. If you've been watching these silly little videos for a while, you'll know that I generally prefer an unanswered question to an unsatisfying explanation, and life forms so fundamentally different to us as changelings are perhaps the best place to employ that logic. You've probably already got your own headcanon for how this worked, and I'll warrant it a fair bit better than somebody who was forced to explain it would have come up with. Elsewhere in the episode, we had Plain Simple Garak engaging in a bit of the old genocide. In his defense, he did at least confirm personally that Odetta was a wrong-un before committing to the action. So what label do we apply to that? Pragmatism? Well, it certainly qualifies. Wiping out the Founders would definitely have solved the problem, though I suspect the Jem'Hadar would exact a heavy price from the Alpha Quadrant before they all carked it from lack of Ketracel White. Patriotism too, then? I'd argue yes. For all his many foibles, a lack of love for the rest of his species does not count among them. He would take a bullet for his people, though probably not until he'd exhausted every opportunity to make somebody else take it instead. Revenge. I think that might be the purest of his reasons. The Founders broke Enarber Tain, a man that Plain Simple Garak adored despite everything, and they did it by beating him at his own game. For all Plain Simple Garak's talk of ego being entirely supplanted by professionalism, he would have hated them for that. I suspect it was this and Odetta saying there were no survivors, rather than the threat against every other Cardigan, that truly motivated him. It's been a while since we've handed out incidental detail points, so let's give some in this episode. When Odetta dismisses her Jem'Hadar guard in the Defiant sickbay, there's a Starfleet guard who leaves as well. Before he does, though, he looks to one side and nods, an indicator that he's been cleared to leave by Odo. It's a small thing and would likely have gone unnoticed, but whoever thought of that should have their efforts recognized. And while we're on the topic of incidental details, we should end with a part of the set falling off. During the fight between Worf and Plain Simple Garak's stunt double, a set of doors that indicate an opening to Jeffrey's tubes, ones designed to open sideways, were knocked out backwards by the stunt performer's arse hitting them and displayed the rear of the set as a result. The lighting was low and the contents sufficiently nondescript, so I can understand the decision to keep it in. Retakes are an expense after all, and things can get pretty tight at the end of a season. What it does make me think is a question that I believe we've asked on here before. If it takes something this obvious to spot an error, how many other times did they get away with it? End of episode.
Nothing's happening.
I know.
But this is the last one. He's supposed to fix it.
I know.
No bollocks to waiting. Oi! Down here, bellend.
What?
Don't act surprised, son. Nobody's gonna buy it when you're wearing a microphone.
That's not even a laptop webcam. He's recording this on a camera.
Typical. I always said he were a fraud. Anyway, what you gonna do to get us out of here?
These are the end credits. I'm not in the end credits.
Yeah, well, maybe you should start pulling your bloody weight then.
Piss off, son. I wrote the rest of the fucking script. This is your job.
How can it be our job when we don't get paid?
We've spoken about that. You know I would send some money your way, but the channel has certain costs and overheads.
What sort of costs?
Technical stuff, mate. You wouldn't understand it.
Bugger all of that. Just get us out of here. You do know you can just walk to the left, don't you?
What are you talking about?
You skipped the end of the timeline, didn't you? That means you get put after the last clip in the timeline. That's how timelines work.
Oh. Yeah, actually that makes sense now I think about it.
Where the fuck did you think it had put you? Belgium?
Yeah, alright, so no need to be a dick about it.
Twats.
Well, that was anticlimactic. We didn't even get a plot for the next season.
Oh, yes, we did.
We did?
Absolutely. We're gonna nick that bastard's Pringles. Oof.